Good morning. My name is Esther Manheimer. I'm Mayor of the City of Asheville, and I'd like to welcome you to the September 21st, 2023 Agenda Briefing Work Session. All council members and staff are participating virtually. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessed through the YouTube icon on the front page of the city's website, or via the live stream. The live meeting will be available on Charter Spectrum Channel 193. You may listen to the meeting via phone at 855-925-2801, meeting code 2196. And as with any work session, we don't take public comment during this meeting. Council and staff, please unmute yourselves and say a quick hello when I call your name. Vice Mayor Sandra Kilgore.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Antoinette Mosley.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Kim Roney.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Maggie Ullman.
Hey, everybody.
And from our staff, City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning.
And City Clerk Maggie Burleson.
Good morning.
Thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to the City Manager, Deborah Campbell.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And again, good morning, everyone. We have a number of items that we want to go over with you all with regards to our regular formal business meeting, but we also wanted to remind you all that we have a work session that starts at 3 o'clock about the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. And for the review of our agenda, we're going to have Rachel Wood, Assistant City Manager. She's going to take the lead, and obviously she'll be supported by the rest of staff. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Wood.
Thank you, Deborah, and good morning, Mayor and Council. I believe we've got Chris Corral on this morning, and Chris is going to provide a few just summary details to give you a better understanding of what we've got planned for that 3 o'clock Thomas Wolfe work session. So I'm going to let Chris provide that overview.
Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. Apologies if there's background noise. I'm at an active construction site, so if you can't hear me, just ask me to repeat myself real quick. On Tuesday at the work session, I intend to go through just the issues that we've had with the Thomas Wolfe HVAC, where we are currently on our plan to get reopened partially, what our steps would be to be reopened at a full capacity, and what requests we would have of council to help get to that. And then also what options are there for us moving forward as far as any potential bigger upgrades to the facility, similar to what was discussed at the Asheville Arts Town Hall, but more refined, really just 1, 2, or 3 things to really look at to get some thoughts and guidance by this group as to the direction that we should really be moving on as staff. So that's the brief elevator speech on Tuesday's work session. Happy to answer any questions that you guys might have now.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, so moving on to the business meeting on Tuesday night, we do have one scheduled proclamation that will be recognizing October 2023 as Fire Prevention Month, and we will have our fire and life safety educator, Jeremy Brooks from the fire department, receiving that proclamation. Moving to the consent agenda, as is our typical process, I'm going to cover items by exception, but of course, please let me know if you have questions on items that I don't cover. And between myself, Ben, and Deborah, we can work to answer those questions. So the first item that I plan to cover with you all is item C and D. Both items C and D represent scheduled routine maintenance items for the Water Utilities Department. Item C is repair work to the utility conduit located at the North Fork Dam access tunnel. And then item D is a project management contract with Black & Veatch to ultimately help with the replacement of 8 purification filters at the Brule water treatment plant that have reached the end of their useful life. This is routine maintenance and is an example of our continued investment in our water treatment facilities and water infrastructure. Moving on to item G. Item G is a resolution for the city manager to sign and submit the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Planning and Homeless Management Information System grant applications for federal fiscal year 2022-2023. This is a renewal of existing grants that help fund $92,000 in planning costs for the city to fulfill its role as the lead applicant for the continuum of care. So that funding really helps support Emily Ball's Homeless Strategies Division, and then also cover $63,000 for our homeless management information system. These grant applications were reviewed by the Housing and Community Development Committee at their meeting this Tuesday, and HCD voted in a 3-0 vote in support of this application. Moving on to items I and J. I and J both pertain to the Swannanoa River Greenway project, which will install approximately 1 mile of greenway along the Swannanoa River from the Glendale-Thompson Street intersection to the Swannanoa River Road, Bleachery Road intersection, where there are not currently bicycle or pedestrian facilities. The project total budget is about $4 million, with funding coming from a combination of our general CIP budget, as well as $2.3 million from the Tourism Product Development Fund, which is administered by the Tourism Development Agency. Item I is the construction contract with Baker Grading and Landscaping. And so the anticipated completion date is about exactly 1 year after contract execution. And then item J is required to acquire the necessary property to complete the project. So this includes necessary condemnation on 8 easements with a combined appraised value of $340,000. This action is necessary because staff has exhausted all of the available opportunities to acquire the needed property through voluntary acquisition, and without these easements, the project could not be completed. Item K is a similar condemnation item, but for the Newhaw Creek Sidewalk project. And this project will install about 1 mile of sidewalk along Newhaw Creek from Bell Road to Beverly Road. And like I said, similar to item K, this is the condemnation to obtain 6 easements that we were not able to acquire via our voluntary acquisition processes, with a combined value of $82,000. Yes, Councilmember Ullman.
So you're mentioning that y'all put a ton of work into trying to negotiate a deal on these properties. Could you give me a sense of kind of what land use they are? Are we talking like commercial? Are we talking vacant lots? Are we talking residence?
It's primarily residential. There are some commercial, but it's primarily residential, where either it's an out-of-state property owner that we haven't been able to get in contact with, or we just have not been able to come to an agreement with the property owner on the acquisition.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving on, if there are no other questions on consent, to presentations and reports, we do have 2 items slated for the city manager's report. Brenda Mills, our Equity and Inclusion Director, will be providing a status update on the Cease the Harm audit work that the city and county currently have underway with the Carter Development Group. That body of work, of course, is occurring as a result of the resolutions that the City Council and County Commission passed at the recommendation of the Community Reparations Commission to ensure we have ceased any further harm to the African American community. And then we will have 1 employee recognition item, which Deborah will provide. And if there are no questions on City Manager's report and presentations, I'm going to let Ben Woody cover the public hearing items.
Thank you, Rachel. And again, good morning, Mayor and Council. We've got 3 public hearing items on the agenda. Item A is actually going to be continued to the December 10th meeting. And the reason for that is the applicant is also planning to pursue a LOIJ. So per council's policy, those typically track concurrently. So the CZ and the LOIJ will come to you together at your December meeting. Item B is a conditional zoning request. And I think, Allison, we've got a somewhat difficult to see site plan, but I think this was the best way to try to represent this request. It's a conditional zoning request that allows for the construction of additional parking adjacent to the East Village Grill off Tunnel Roads. Just to orient council a little bit, at the top of the site plan, there is a building. That's the existing East Village Grill that's on Tunnel Road. Just below that, and kind of, again, a similar kind of lighter line weight, you can see the existing parking associated with that property. And then below that, with the shaded area, is a new surface parking lot that they are proposing to add to the property. And that's what's triggering the rezoning. The reason it's triggering the rezoning is that particular part of the parcel, or that parcel is zoned RS8, which doesn't allow surface parking. So they're rezoning the entire property to a CZ commercial district to allow this additional surface parking. A couple of key things to keep in mind is there are no changes proposed for the existing restaurant and parking. So what's there will remain that way. However, the new surface parking is limited to either surface parking, which is what they're proposing, or residential uses in the event it ever reverts back to something other than parking. So it's a pretty narrow CZ, and again, just adds the additional parking to support the business. TRC approved this application with a few conditions, and the Planning and Zoning Commission approved unanimously at their August meeting. So with no questions on that application, it's pretty straightforward. Public hearing item C is Project Aspire. We've covered that twice at agenda briefings, and of course at your September 12th council meeting, you received the staff presentation as well as applicant presentations on this project. At your next meeting on the 26th, your upcoming meeting, what you'll do is you'll get an update from staff. There has been a number of additions and modifications to the conditions associated with this project. Those will be outlined very clearly in your staff report, so you'll be able to see those changes ahead of the public hearing, but staff will review those with council. And of course, you'll have the actual public hearing, so we'll have our comment from those in the community. And then, of course, at that point, council will be able to make any vote or decisions on that project. So again, when just want to reiterate, when that comes out to you, hopefully later today, you'll be able to see those changes from the developer in the staff report, proposed changes. Any questions on Project Aspire and public hearing item C?
I think it's a good time just to pause here for a second. Brad sent us the revised list of conditions, and I know Sage had some edits to clarify what she thought was the intent of the council discussion in terms of the direction around those. Is that settled, or are there some outstanding questions around that, Brad, or isn't anybody have any questions about it?
Mayor, I believe we have been able to incorporate even the latest changes that have been shared by Councilmember Turner. I am actually seeing that our planning department has been working diligently to update those conditions. They have just provided internally the updated version, so that should be out with the latest proposals, at least to the extent that the developer was willing to agree. So we now have what essentially is all of the inclusions that have been accepted by the applicant.
But you're waiting for planning to finalize their whatever they're doing before you send it back out to us? Is that what I understood you to say?
I think we're just in the final review stage of that right now to make sure all the wording is correct. But we should be able to send that out and share with council shortly.
And Mayor, I have asked for planning staff to assist in the formatting of understanding what is new, because it's a long staff report, as you know, from our last council meeting. So I'm trying to get them to, from a formatting perspective, so that it's clear, not just for you all, but for the community.
Yeah, maybe
What
like
is
highlight the new
Yes.
stuff or something,
Yes,
something
ma'am.
like that.
Something, yes.
Yeah, I can confirm that that another language tweak back and forth occurred this morning, but I think all the concerns I brought up at the last meeting have been addressed and the language clear. We'll look at the final draft. And then I made 2 requests, just so y'all know, Councilwomen, what is helpful at coming. What Deborah just spoke to, like some kind of clear way to see what was proposed and was changed and what we're seeing now. And also just like clear to the community, because there was lots of discussion last time, but not lots of presentation or points or bullet lists. And then also I requested that staff come with the zoning overlay for that, those particular parcels, what the heights would have been and so on, because I see them referencing heights and I just want to see that it aligns. So I believe they'll have those ready for us.
Yeah, I had that question too. And I think what I understand now is the conditions just say that they'll adhere to whatever the existing zoning allows for height.
That's what I
Correct? Is
saw.
that
The
right?
2
Brad, you nodding? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll add, Councilwoman Turner, staff will have supporting information in the presentation that illustrates by right heights, what's proposed in this project, and also have some comparable downtown buildings and their heights. So we'll have a good array of information around heights. You'll have that for your decision making.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Someone actually asked me if I had heard about the law that no one could build taller than the Eris building. Can't say that I'd heard that or seen that anywhere, but it came up. Anyways, thank you. Yeah, the other heights and other tall buildings, I would love to get that perspective.
So the way that I'm reading it, original request about maintaining public right-of-way is included in the list. The roads will stay public instead of private roads. Thank you for confirming that. And then because we didn't have public comment in the last meeting around this, I am anticipating we will have public comment at the next one. If there are solutions that are brought forward that we neglected here last time, what are our options for adding them?
Councilmember Ronnie,
I
I was pausing to see if the mayor wanted to chime in, but I'm happy
Yeah,
to
I mean,
chime in.
I think it'd be like any conditional zoning. Sometimes we add some conditions during the meeting and finalize it. So we can either do it on the spot like we normally do, or if what happens like what happened last time and there's a need to continue it, then it would be continued. Or is there something else you have in mind? Or yeah.
The reason I didn't name them is that the community needs to name them, and so we still haven't heard those concerns. So I just think be ready to hear what the neighborhood has to say.
Any other questions on public hearing item C?
You know, I did have one other request I haven't seen in my inbox. Can someone find the slide of it had arrows and pathways, except, how people walk and drive and operate through this 10.5 acres. I've seen it once. I haven't been able to find it. It would help me with the bike lane language that I need to review.
We'll get that to you.
Yeah, I think that came up during the meeting, didn't it? And that it existed, but we didn't have it attached virtually to the agenda.
Okay, so if that is everything on public hearing item C, Rachel, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and move down to new business. New business item A is a resolution to adopt the Pack Square Plaza Vision Plan. Again, at your September 12th council meeting, you received a presentation on the vision plan. At your meeting on Tuesday, staff will provide a brief overview of the plan, not a full presentation. And of course, you'll then open up a discussion for public comments as we do for plans. And then staff is requesting a council to adopt the vision plan. One thing I want to note about public comment is, in addition to the opportunity to attend the meeting and give feedback to council, the staff report will include not only a summary of engagement that's happened to this point, but we're also going to link to the project page that includes detailed community comments. So again, we want to give council access, not just to the public comment that may come next week, but also the engagement process, including meetings, survey instruments, and everything that went into kind of developing and forming this plan. And that'll all be available to you in the staff report. Any questions on new business item A? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel.
All right, thank you, Ben. So that concludes our overview of the September 26th City Council business meeting agenda. Next up is our review of council committees, and we only have one committee agenda to highlight, and that is the September 26th Environment and Safety Committee, and I'm going to let Deborah provide that overview.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And just to add, our meeting will start at 11 o'clock on the 26th, and we have a number of items on this agenda. The first item, as it relates to business, where we have public comment and minutes and so forth, is the Urban Forestry Commission annual update, and that will be given by the chair of that commission, and that's information only. Then we have single-use plastic reduction project update, which is going to be given by Sustainability Director Bridget Herron, who will be pretty much focusing in on the results of our community outreach and responses, interactions that we've had with the community with regards to the potential of advancing an ordinance to regulate plastic bags. But I know that there is some additional work being done by the General Assembly. We will potentially be impacted in terms of next steps related to whatever action the General Assembly takes around this subject matter. I'm sorry, Maggie?
Yeah, just to tease this out in case folks haven't been seeing, that there's a proposal in the current budget to ban cities or counties banning plastic bags. So the fundamental conversation we've been having about this is at play. We're hearing that the budget will be passed today or tomorrow. So it fundamentally could be taken off the table. So depending on that, I think in committee we'll get into now what, so what, do we move from regulate to educate? What does this look like? So just a heads up. Thanks.
Thank you, Maggie. Appreciate that. The next item for information only, and by the way, that single-use reduction project, obviously just before for information only. Recreate Asheville, shaping our city parks. It's the update of the effort that the Parks Department has related to developing a master plan or updating our parks master plan. This presentation will focus pretty much on public outreach efforts and providing you all with any input in terms of public input that we have had to date. And then our last item, again for information only, is kind of the next steps regarding the solicitation ordinance. And I'm going to ask Brad if he wouldn't mind kind of providing us an update on what that conversation will look like.
I'll be happy to, Madam Manager, and good morning again, everyone. Previously at this committee, we had come in August to talk about some proposed technical amendments to our two existing ordinances regarding solicitation. Council, through two readings, has now passed those technical amendments. But during that initial committee meeting, there was some discussion about some other potential review and possible updates to our ordinances. So we want now to come back and give this particular committee an update on where things stand, what staff is doing now that the technical amendments have been updated, and what our proposed recommendation for providing the community with some updates around what our existing law says, what our existing law does not say. We became very conscious of the fact that there was quite a bit of misunderstanding and lack of knowledge about either the existence of or what exactly is in our ordinances. And we think we can do a great deal of good simply by providing some community outreach on that. So we have a plan to both track the data around this subject, to provide council with some information, while also laying out the roadmap for what we want to do with some public information as well, and close the loop for you on some of those other issues that were originally discussed as potential amendments.
Thank you, Grant. And that concludes our agenda for the Environment and Safety Committee.
Great, thank you, Deborah. So next on our agenda for today is an overview of the 8-week planning calendar. I anticipate there probably will be some very detailed conversation regarding planned agenda items that we have coming up over the next couple of months, but this is the last slated agenda item for today's discussion. So I'll start with October 10th. October 10th, I want to highlight 3 key items. First, I want to note that starting at 3:30, we do have a work session scheduled, and this will be the first of 2 work sessions that we'll have related to our facilities assessment. So that'll be a presentation with Walter Ear, and he will have Creech & Associates, our consultant who has assisted with this facilities assessment, presenting those findings and seeking feedback from you as we begin conversations with you on CIP development and ultimately planning for a 2024 GEO bond referendum. So October 10th, the work session is scheduled to begin at 3:30, and the sole subject matter will be preliminary results of that facilities assessment. Next, I want to highlight that we will have a public hearing on October 10th to amend our Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. The primary purpose of this item is to reallocate approximately $300,000 of unspent CDBG funds in order to meet our HUD timeliness requirements. The current recommendation is to make some ADA and sidewalk improvements on Patton Avenue. This potential project has been voted on in a 2-to-1 vote by the Housing and Community Development Committee. And so we will be asking full council's approval so that we can ensure that we get these CDBG funds spent in accordance with the HUD timeliness requirements. Yes, Councilmember Turner.
Just sharing, I was the no vote on that, primarily because historically CDBG funds have been used towards housing initiatives, and they can be used for this use. That is clear. However, I feel like with such an amount of housing issues needed and some upcoming asks, sheltering, we just don't know that this $300,000 may be better purposed. And it's unclear to me if these sidewalk improvements would have been budgeted somewhere else already. So just a heads up, that's why I was concerned about it, and will probably still be concerned on Tuesday.
Thank you, Councilmember Turner. And of course, we'll provide additional details at the October 10th presentation when council will be asked to take a vote on this. The primary concern with these dollars is the ability to spend them prior to that April 2024 deadline that we have with HUD. And so because we do have the capability to perform this work in-house, we don't have to do a solicitation for an outside contractor. We don't have to have a contract prepared with a nonprofit agency. And so our concern right now is twofold. One, of course, the project that was selected is number 1 on our Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan. And we want to make sure that we continue the implementation of that ADA transition plan. But 2, if these dollars are not spent by April, it could jeopardize future community development block grant funding. And so that's our primary reason for recommending that we spend these funds in-house on a city capital project.
For discussion base, could you have ready what the last couple CDBG allocations were?
Absolutely. We'll have that ready for the presentation.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so then moving on for October 10th.
Rachel, excuse
Oh, yes,
me.
I'm sorry.
I think Councilmember Kilgore.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yes, and I'd like to know also, Rachel, I know right now a lot of people are hurting as far as that need rental assistance. And when we talked about the CBG funds being used, I was wondering, is there any way to sort of check beforehand to see if that money can go to some agencies to help with that? Because I've had a lot of clients that actually have been reaching out who are losing their place and things like that. And if you look at the courthouse docket, you've got so many people being evicted. So I was just, if we had an idea if that money can be spent towards that in a timely manner, I would like to see that as an option.
Sure. I'll have our Community Development Division Manager, Dennis Newbern, provide details on the category of CDBG dollars that are unallocated and need to be spent in order to meet our timeliness requirements. And he can provide you with an update on what specifically those funds can be spent for. We'll try to get that information out well in advance of the October 10th vote, just so that you have that understanding leading up to your consideration on October 10th.
Thank you.
And then this is Kim. I had my hand up as well. I also would support that request, Sandra. Thank you. I am seeing, and I don't know if this is somehow related, a number of projects getting dug up to get them back into ADA compliance or into ADA compliance across the city. There's a bunch happening in the River Arts District. There's a ton of brick that's moved and displaced and tripping hazards. There were questions about some areas in town, and I'm not sure if that's connected or if it's separate. If it is separate, if there's a way to have an understanding of how many projects we have that are currently being disrupted, what the taxpayer cost is because they weren't installed correctly the first time.
Other than the River Arts District, which we're aware of, is this a more widespread problem? On that last point Kim's talking about, where it's being torn up to be corrected?
The River Arts District project, it's the contractor is having to make those improvements.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, because right.
And there were recent improvements made at Pack Square. I'm not sure.
Those are DOT. DOT is doing all of Biltmore, Merriman. I mean, I can see them doing it. But I'm a little bit concerned that based on Councilman Roney's question, the implication is that this is like widespread where a contractor did it wrong the first time. But other than the River Arts District, I'm not aware of another location like that.
I'm not aware of one either. Ben, you may have additional details. I do know, as I mentioned, we do have our ADA transition plan. And so the Public Works Department, in collaboration with Capital Projects and Transportation, is working on making sure that our existing assets that are not currently ADA compliant are brought into compliance. So this project that we're referencing on Patton Avenue would be an example of that. This is an existing sidewalk that we're wanting to make sure is as accessible as possible.
Thank you for that clarity.
And we are putting laser focus on trying to upgrade our infrastructure to be ADA compliant. The plan that was done has given us a good roadmap in terms of priorities, and through the CIP process, any funding opportunities that we have, we are trying to address that concern to allow our infrastructure to be accessible for all people in our community.
Deborah, that's of course a value I support. I'm just very sensitive to it coming out of housing dollars in the midst of such a tragic housing crisis.
Sure, we understand, and unfortunately, the timeliness and our ability to spend the money, I think is the biggest challenge. And I've said on a number of occasions, when I got here, I was surprised that we actually didn't spend more of our CDBG dollars on infrastructure.
Well, thank you all for that feedback, and we will definitely make sure we provide you with additional details leading up to the vote on October 10th. Just to add on what Deborah was saying, it's not just that we have to have the funds obligated in order to meet the HUD timeliness requirements. We actually have to have those dollars fully expended. They can't even be encumbered. They need to be fully spent by April 2024. And so that's the challenge that we're working against on that item. Last item I want to highlight on October 10th is the new business item where City Council will be asked to approve a resolution reaffirming your support of multimodal transportation and authorizing the city manager to direct staff to continue their work on the College and Patton Bike Lane project. I hope you all were able to review the memo that was included in the agenda briefing materials that Jamie sent out on Tuesday. That includes a detailed overview of what has transpired to date on the project, the justification for the project, also includes the survey data. The survey data by race category was provided again at council's request. And then we also provided public comment that was received at previous downtown commission meetings. I'll note that this Friday, a presentation will be made to the Downtown Commission, informing the Downtown Commission of the upcoming vote, and then also providing an overview on some of the revisions to the loading zones that were made based on feedback received at previous public engagement. We've updated the city's project page to note the vote is occurring on October 10th. We're doing several email pushes to our distribution lists, and then we're having some targeted meetings with downtown business owners. I'll note that we are meeting with Sophie Dixon and WRES on October 6th to give her an overview of this project and also give her a preview on some upcoming other city capital projects, including that Patton Avenue ADA project. And so just wanted to let you all know that is coming up on October 10th. The intent is to receive a vote from the City Council so that staff knows that we have your support with regard to us proceeding with the project. Next steps, if City Council approves the resolution, would be staff finalizing the solicitation to select a contractor to install the work. Yes, Councilmember Roney.
There is a piece of information that I requested a College Patton project that I didn't see in here, and maybe so maybe you can point me in the right direction. But I know with our bike and pedestrian crash ratio, have some demographics that are available. I don't see them lined up here, but maybe I'm missing something. But I had asked if we could look at, some of the demographics of the crash in the area, so that we can talk about who we're trying to help with safety for.
We have requested that information. It is going to take some time to be able to pull that together. So we will aim to try to have that information to you prior to October 10th, but we were not able to have it in time to prepare the memo and get that out in advance of today's conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's a conversation about we have the highest bike and pedestrian accident ratio in the state per. That's not good for business. It's not good for people who live and work here, but also the need for cars. When folks can use a different option than a car, it makes more room for people who drive cars. But also, at some point, we all get out of vehicles and become, on the sidewalk together. So it would just help if we had some demographic information on accidents that have happened, maybe in like the past 3 to 5 years, would help us, I think, make an informed decision.
Thanks, Kim. I agree with that.
I had requested, and maybe it's already in my inbox and I've missed it. They're busy inboxes, but a parking analysis, what spaces are being removed and where, just a sheet on that. Have we, did I miss it?
Yeah, that should have, I thought that was included in the memo, but I may be
I
wrong.
didn't see it, but maybe.
Look at that.
It is in the memo, 17 spaces, no handicap spaces.
And then there are actually
Where?
drawings, if you go to the end of the memo and attachments that indicate where spaces are being moved or removed. And if you need it in a different level of detail, we can work towards that leading up to October 10th.
Okay, if I can find it here.
You look at pages 7, 8, 9, and 10. I believe that will have an indication of the revisions made to parking.
Okay, I'll scan that real quick. Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, Rachel.
Sure.
Okay. And did you ever do a report where we're talking about a holistic approach to the whole biking situation, so we can look at Biltmore, Biltmore and Patton, and also College, and all of it. And the reason I say holistic approach, I want to look at the total parking spaces what will be impacted within the in the city. And then also take in consideration the streetlets that we're actually have that's taking up parking spaces. I just want to, will we cover all that so we can see exactly a plan, a complete plan as opposed to piecemeal?
So if you look at page 7, we have the plan for our future existing and underway bicycle network. We can, leading up to the 10th, provide you with details. Of course, not having the final plans on some of those future bicycle infrastructure projects, we wouldn't necessarily be able to give you a specific number, but we could give you an estimate on impact to parking. City Council is going to be asked to update your outdoor dining policy, so we can let you know right now the number of parking spaces that are being occupied by streeteries. So we can certainly pull the known information together for you prior to October 10th. I would just note that there may be new restaurants, for example, who request future streeteries. There may be existing streeteries that ultimately go away. And then again, because some of these projects are so preliminary in nature for future bicycle infrastructure, we wouldn't necessarily be able to give you a specific number, but we could give you an estimate based on our preliminary plans.
And that estimate also will include the amount of handicap and ADA parking that we have available too, or that we're losing in availability.
Correct. The memo does highlight the number of spaces that are being removed specifically to the College and Patton project, which is 17. There is no loss to ADA accessible spaces. There's one space that will be moved as a result of the design, but there will be no net reduction in accessible parking as a result of this project.
And that will also be done for the Biltmore corridor, Merriman corridor. So.
That project doesn't have a timeline on it at this point because the original plan was to have that move forward with NCDOT. And so we don't have a timeline for that project. So we can let you know if when that project moves forward in the future, what the impact would be as a part of that overall assessment that you've requested. But that project doesn't have a specific timeline on when it will be moving forward.
Okay.
Is this a good time for us to chime in about the all modes of transportation ordinance amendments that Brad, has seen a request for? So Sage had sent around an email about this, and just kind of a general comment about trying to get consensus built based on an email with individual responses. I think it's a little bit challenging and sort of not how everyone's been trained. So I don't know that everyone chimes in. So I saw that there was a request to advance ordinance amendments that would allow for all modes of transportation. I believe, Sage, maybe you want to say a little bit more about the request and then see if we've got a consensus around moving that ahead.
Sure. So I know we got a little split on this last time and we held off. And I've been talking with businesses at length. And for me personally, when we were looking at other modes, when we were talking about bikes and scooters, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was pretty supportive of it. Not necessarily, I think it's a greater discussion to bring in the rentals like the birds and the lifts, but for the private user to be able to use their alternative modes so that bike lanes and all these lanes weren't just pedaled and so on. I wanted to see if there was support for allowing more modes. And I think that would help me get across the line because it feels a little absolutist right now. Car lanes for just cars, sidewalks for just feet, bike lanes for just bikes. And there are these other modes that are last mile connectors. And I think we need to, even if it's on a trial basis, I think that we need to explore this, in my opinion.
And I'll add that because we have at least 2 modes that are, three modes that are technically illegal in the Central District and one citywide with the electric scooters. I don't think our intention was to make it people couldn't use their personal mobility devices, but it is the outcome. So we've made significant investments in our Parks and Rec facility at the Asheville Skate Park. I went down there the other day. People are roller skating, but it's illegal to roller skate to there. So it's kind of counterintuitive that you would have to drive to the skate park when it's a mode of transportation. So I know there's a number of cities across North Carolina who have rules around it's not for recreational purposes, for transportation purposes. But I am hopeful that with all the new technologies that are coming online, that we can make sure that everyone's able to use their personal mobility device. It would mean that we probably need to change the Charter 19.67.
And Councilwoman, if you didn't know, Brad did draft a document for us. I think it went to all of us. If not, maybe he could forward that. And it was kind of what would we need to review? What language would come up if we wanted to address this? And it was fairly lengthy, but it is in your inbox. And then go ahead, Sandra. I know you have comments.
Okay. What I'd like to say is, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a matter of, my concern is not the mode of transportation that we're using. My concern is the lack of available space downtown as far as the roadways. I think that if we do consider bringing the other multimodal, transportations items into this, I'm concerned with how safe is it, depending on who will be using it. I mean, as far as the scooters, the skateboarders, the bikers, and I know Sage at one point was wheelchair. I just sort of think that with that type of different modal plans, I think that could actually be more safety challenge.
I hear you. I understand your position too. I wonder if sometimes we have to take risks, and that's kind of why I'm suggesting trial. And
the only reason I say that, Sage, is because you go downtown during the at night when the streets and sidewalks are so packed during the summer, and then you've got the lanes there with all these different transportations. I just sort of think it may get, and granted, if we had more space downtown, more as far as the lanes, I would be for this without a doubt. I'm just concerned about our limited space available downtown on those main corridors, and not on the side streets, just on the main corridors.
Sure. I understand. I know it's probably worth mentioning too. I learned a little something about this lane, particular on Patton in college, that I didn't know about others and hadn't heard before. And it's the difference between a bike lane and a bike plus lane. And I understand that the bike plus lane actually has some different parameters. Maybe it's width. I don't know if we need all that information, but it is actually designed for all the modes, not just the bicycle, whereas some bike lanes are really narrow and just for bikes.
And that's true. Yes.
And this is, in fact, a bike plus lane.
Okay.
So 2 thoughts. I'm interested in learning more about all modes and what legal basically barriers we have in the way to doing that. So if that can be incorporated into our conversation, I'd be supportive of that. The other thing, back to you, Sandra, is I spent quite a bit of time doing research on the impacts of multimodal infrastructure. And could you send me some of the research that you're seeing that makes you concerned about these from a safety perspective? Because I would love any links to learn more.
Okay, the reason I'm concerned about the safety, my major concern is access. I'm concerned about the EMS. I'm concerned about the trash removal. I'm concerned about the service providers downtown. I'm concerned about parking. I'm concerned about if those lanes were wider in our streets, we could accommodate that. But to be able to try to compact all of these things on those small corridors where we don't have options of expanding the width of our roads downtown. We don't have that option.
Right.
We're expanding our
for the research.
And yet we're expanding our sidewalks, okay? And then you say that you want downtown to be accessible to all, but yet and still, by getting rid of a lot of the parking, what you're doing is eliminating a large population of the elderly people, the people over 60, 65 that may come downtown, but do not come downtown because parking is not accessible. They can't park comfortably and get to the restaurants or the shops You know, they have to park in a garage, which means they don't come downtown. So I think that what it does, it sort of pushes a lot of the locals out of downtown, which I think we should be encouraging, especially in light of what's going on with the tourist industry here. Because people say we only have downtown tourists.
I hear that you're really.
I think it'll help.
We have a high age population. Do you know that here in this in this little area, we have, I think, I'm not sure, but it's a very extremely high population of people over 60, 65. These are the people that usually come downtown and want to frequent some of the restaurants and things, but do not come because they can't park near the area. So I think we need to look at it from a holistic way of how it impacts the entire community. I think that we're not doing that. I think that we're just
because we're in this agenda review and we're obviously fixing for a good debate on this one. So, I mean, we've got a process in place where we're going to have the bike lane resolution coming to us in the first meeting in October. So that's already set in place, and we'll obviously have this discussion again at that time. The question before us right now is just whether or not there are, 4 head nods to direct Brad to continue work on the drafting ordinance amendments to allow for all modes of transportation in the bike lane. So we're talking about skateboards, a private electric scooter, a one wheel, roller skates, whatever, like you see in a lot of cities in their downtown bike lanes. It's not just bikes, it's other wheels, if you will, in the bike lane, not cars. But so I mean, that's all. And I am very supportive of legal preparing these ordinance amendments for our consideration. I know we're not voting on this right now. We just need to set it in motion so that Brad can do that. And I think I'm hearing Sage, Maggie, Kim, and myself. Shanika, I don't know if you have feelings one way or another, or Antoinette and Sandra, you've stated where you're at right now in terms of this issue. Shanika and Antoinette, do you want to weigh in on this moving forward, or we already have 4 folks, but it would be, if you have an opinion about it one way or another, that would be great.
I can add to the question. This is also a staff capacity issue. We haven't been enforcing it the way we were pre-pandemic, but do we really have the staff to have unequal enforcement of modes of transportation, especially when technology is changing? So if we could also add to it, just like looking at it as a staff capacity issue and fair enforcement.
I appreciate everybody's input too. If there is, and I would love to hear from Shanika and Antoinette as well. I think I also requested whatever the study was done several years ago. I just keep hearing it happen, but I never saw it. So if it exists, can someone please get it to us, or whatever we learned?
This is we got federal grant money to look at, I think it was e-bikes or scooters or both, something
and
like that.
And Multimodal took it on. I know there was a process. I just never saw any results. So if someone could get that to us, it would.
I think it was pre-pandemic even, so it's been a while.
We do have that study.
Hey, and I just wanted to make sure Antoinette or Shanika didn't want to jump in here. We're all very eager to discuss this topic. Well, some of us are.
So the question is whether there's support for Brad looking into all modes of transportation for bike lanes.
And moving. This would be moving through our process for an ordinance amendment.
And moving towards, say it again.
I mean, it's not just him looking into it, it would be to bring forward the proposed amendment for consideration to allow for the all modes of transportation. Yes.
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have another data request for this October 10th. You share in the current memo that it's a loss of 17 spaces. Can we please have information on the total number of public spaces citywide and private spaces? Just decks. I just want to know the total parking capacity, because 17 sounds big, but if we have over 2,000 spaces, that's less than 1/3%. So it's that context would be really helpful to me.
Yes, we can provide that. And we're also planning on including average occupancy rates weekly and weekend for the city owned. We won't have that data on the privately owned garages as well.
You guys have data on privately owned surface lots and parking garages?
We do not. I apologize
Yeah,
if I said that incorrectly.
I was gonna say,
Have it
don't nod your head so quick.
We
I mean,
used
you
to
might-
have that data. We used to
Well,
get it
I don't know
covered.
that we did. You know who had it was Pat Whalen's wife.
We used to get it. I used to review it in the Parking and Transportation Committee.
Well, Ken's
Charts, all the
bobblehead
things.
is on this call. Maybe he knows. But,
Ken, we'd like to see
yeah.
that data again. Bring it back, please. It was by deck, by hour, by rate, by performance. I mean,
we
it was-
had that for city decks. I don't
Yes.
recall that we had that for private decks, did we?
We had the detailed information that Sage is mentioning, and it was for the city decks,
Not private. That's what I'm
No.
saying.
private.
Yeah, I know. I know we've got it for city.
Okay,
We
apologies.
do
I didn't
not
hear that
have
one.
it for private. Yeah, no.
But the Walker Consultant project that's been going on now, they're in the final report. There is some mention of some of the private facilities, so we can definitely furnish that information.
You know, Ken, what we used to see was that there were zones all the way through H, right? A through H zones. And we used to see parking demand by that. And I think when we started looking at it was when we were talking about the A-Loft parking partnership. And we were trying to see where the demand was by zone. I remember mapping it. But if any of that exists, that might be helpful to this discussion and helpful to the Aspire discussion.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sage, that data is no longer kept up to date because it got too costly for us to do it on an annual basis or whatnot. But you're right, that was all part of that parking study that was done in 2007.
Ooh, that's a long time ago.
Yes, it
Well,
is.
maybe that's something we want to put on the horizon to understand our parking as we explore all modes. Thank you, Ken. Didn't realize you were here.
Where can I access all of the responses to the survey?
That is linked in the memo that Jamie sent out on Tuesday.
So it includes for every single response, everything that an individual responded?
So you've got all of the comment data that was provided by individual respondents, yes. And then we've also got it broken out by race. We're still working on getting it broken out by the other demographic categories.
Okay.
Okay, pregnant pause moment. Looks like we exhausted this one. Brad, you got your marching order. Thank you. Timeline wise, we're Sage, I know you wanted these sort of synced up, but it may need to run through a committee, I would imagine. Hopefully it would get to us at the beginning of October, but maybe not.
Mayor, we would typically take these types of ordinance amendments through multimodal as well, and then through a council committee before reaching council. So it is more likely that we are looking at quite frankly, November or even potentially December, depending upon the schedule of those committees, because we're going to get into a reduced schedule for council as well during that period.
Yeah, I'm less worried about it happening, like going into effect October 12th or something, but just more concerned about what I mentioned before, just not being just a bike lane. So as long as we're committed to moving it forward and the commissions are able to give input, it sounded like they had input and they had put a recommendation together before. I guess it's aged, but as long as we're not setting up for failure here, because I'm hearing councilwomen really wanted to be heard and looked at and move. So
Yeah, we have a recommendation from the Greenways Committee to address point 6 and 7 from 2 years ago.
yeah, I remember that. See, that's kind of the history I was looking for, because I don't want to circumvent community input, but I think we did a lot.
Yeah,
So-
the multimodal has had this as a
Yeah.
priority for a while, so that might be what y'all need.
Yeah, some of that would be helpful, just to know that we've actually talked about it. Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay,
so
where were we?
That wraps up October 10th. There are a few items for October 24th that I wanted to highlight. So did want to note that the plan right now is to have the public hearing on the South Slope Vision Plan. Also 2 UDO amendments, one for cottage development and one for flag lot standards in the UDO for both of those. And then the key item that will be under new business is the disparity study. I will pause. Councilmember Turner.
Quick question. I heard flag lots. So is it going to move to PED first, or does it just come to us?
Ben, you can provide details. My understanding is we're working at a staff level to have those conversations with the developer who has requested these UDO amendments, and that it will not travel to PED and will go directly to council, which would be our typical process. But Ben, please feel free to add details.
And these aren't staff initiated amendments. These are.
No, I'm familiar, and I've heard it's been a little back and forth and hectic and fast. And so I'm just kind of curious the process, but I also find it interesting, I will say.
The typical process is for UDO text amendments or wording amendments to go through P&Z, then directly to council.
P&Z. Yeah, I know we have this direct resident tool, so I guess that's what's being used. So, okay, right to council. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's typically, and that's the case, and I think Brad would confirm this, and that's generally in statutes, that's how zoning ordinance amendments track, is to whatever the local planning advisory board is, and then to city council.
Okay, it looked like it is on PED for September or October 10th.
Ben, can you confirm?
I do
put it in the chat.
I do not show it on the October PED meeting in the work plan.
Someone just put it in the chat. I was just repeating.
Yeah, I'm not.
Maggie did, yeah.
Ben, I got that off of the request that I just received.
Okay.
Not for privately initiated.
Yeah, that may be old information, Maggie, to update. Okay, so last item for October 24th that I wanted to highlight is the disparity study. So this is a new business item. You'll hear a presentation from our consultant, Miller 3, and council will be asked to adopt a resolution that has 3 key actions. One will be to accept the report of the actual study that Miller 3 conducted. 2 will be continuing the city's race and gender conscious contracting policy as supported by the disparity study. And then the 3rd portion of the resolution will be directing staff to develop an implementation plan for the recommendations of that disparity study. This item will first be heard by the Equity and Engagement Committee at their October 17th meeting, hopefully receive a vote at that meeting, and then will come forward to council at the October 24th meeting. I'll just note, moving on, no meeting on October 31st or November 7th, and November 14th is the date that we're planning to have the second part of the facilities assessment. So that will be another work session on November the 14th, likely to begin at 3:30. You will hear part 2 of the facilities assessment presentation. And that concludes the planned content for today's agenda briefing.
I am considering bringing something else up that I've been talking with councilmen. I wasn't normally going to do this, but because we're moving so quickly, I just want to quickly say something. I've been talking with many members of council around some downtown issues. I've been meeting with some businesses and residents in downtown for the last 3-4 weeks. And really it started with hearing from them, a lot of them. And then I know we got the letter and the email from William Disson and signed on by many restaurants and businesses in downtown. And I want to highlight that I am still concerned. And I know we saw great response from the 60-day initiative. And then there was like this transition plan. And it has become unclear what is still being done in downtown. And there's an overriding sense of more is needed. And so in an effort to not just say, hey, we need to do more, there's been this kind of activity around like, what would more mean? So I've shared with most councilwomen the last day or two what kind of list has come together, and hoping to share it with staff as well. But maybe this is a time to bring it up in case you haven't been able to tune in yet, or you'd like to say something about downtown, or if we want to keep if we want to push this to a committee or if we want to talk about it in general as a council or just work with Deborah.
I'd love to talk about it more as a council because we still have opportunity to expand community paramedicine, and I think it's needed.
That's on the list, right? And there's some county requests. I've been talking with county commissioners as well. And so it's just, but it's, I don't want to pose it like it's this thing we've all come together and needs to be done. It's more of a, if we were going to take some more action, what could it be? What can staff give us feedback on would work? What can some of the partners mentioned do? Can we huddle around this again? And I don't know if there's a good format for it or how y'all would like to proceed with that. To Esther's point, emailing and stuff doesn't always get through the best process.
So just for point of clarity, we have a letter from a number of downtown businesses on the heels of a meeting that I had with several of them last week at their request, which is kind of a call to action for the fall season. So, sort of recognizing that we need some help downtown for this fall season, and their concern about the viability of their businesses going into this fall season in the downtown area. And they have a letter that they've presented. You guys have all seen it. It has sort of 5 asks. One of them is to bring the sheriff's department back downtown. So that's, a lot of conversation happening with the county around that one, but, and recognizing also our medium and long-term efforts and supporting that, but a request for a more immediate addressing of the issues around downtown in light of the fall season. And so I know staff is meeting tomorrow, and we should see a response to that letter, if I understand correctly, after that. So, and then I think, Sage, you have kind of the bigger list, if you will, from your efforts of talking to folks downtown and sort of compiling a larger list. And I think, to Kim's point, it includes things like community paramedics and kind of a larger sweep, which you're circulating to folks on council and getting some consensus around. I think that the message is that there's a lot of anxiety and concern about the state of downtown and being able to support a vibrant economy for our city. And what, the things that we're doing, we just celebrated the opening of Compass Point last week with Homeward Bound to house 87 people experiencing homelessness into permanent supportive housing. So great deal of effort finally coming to fruition. Emily Ball, our own Emily Ball, was reminding me that she pitched that idea to Homeward Bound when she was an employee there in 2018. So obviously, first of all, brilliant ideas. Second of all, these things take time. So, what can we do though to help support the situation downtown for all of our merchants, businesses, locals here heading into this fall season?
I definitely want to hear more about this, and I would love us to think about it. We do quite a bit of planning in many departments, and I'd love to be sent any short and long range plans we already have on the books for safety and reimagining public safety. I don't know that that's a common practice in that realm of community leadership, but looking forward, I feel like we need something that's like, what are we doing in 7 days? What are we doing in 30 days? What are we doing in 12 months? What are we doing over 5 years? Because the impact, some strategies take a long time, like you're saying, and we need to do those, but we also need to do shorter term solutions. And so I really feel like that level of conversation, I'd be really bummed if the follow-up on this was a memo and that's the only conversation we get to have as council. I think this is going to continue to be a persistent challenge unless we start looking up and having longer range, broader conversations on the strategy, and that they're comprehensive in both and across, again, as we've all said, about root causes and immediate concerns. So I'm not sure where that happens or when that happens. I don't really see it on any agendas, but I feel like that's a need.
Yeah, just to chime in real quick, I think you're spot on. You know, like Esther was just alluding to some things that just opened. There's the new Mission Health Center, Mental Health Center opens this month as well. There's several things. You know, we obviously just funded the 43 more shelter beds starting in 2 weeks. We have some good like mid and long-term plans queuing up that I think are going to be hugely impactful for the community. I know Esther's been working on them with County Commission for our Beach for our, and but I think what I've been hearing mostly is like, what about now? So to Esther's point about this fall, our biggest season, you know, October is usually our busiest month, and then July is our second. And I heard July didn't go so well. And I'm hearing, you know, businesses are down, but residents are also concerned. It's just a lot of things. I'm hearing locals aren't going downtown again. And I'm wondering if we just need that broader look at why and what could we be doing. And in some ways, it looks like there are things we used to do that we just haven't picked back up yet. You know, and again, we're looking down the tunnel at a potential bid proposal. And I know I'm concerned about that becoming something without addressing just baseline needs. So some of this is just maybe getting us back on track after pandemic, after policing shortages. You know, we're just trying to build back up, but maybe we need another big push.
And I would like to see if the city could provide more data as to how many, as far as the homeless downtown. So say, for instance, can they give us an idea, keep up with an idea of numbers? And the reason I say that is because when I spoke with David Nash and he talked about Compass Village, he basically said that over 60 of the people that are going in there are on the street now. I was just wondering how many of those people maybe on the streets downtown will be able to go into the shelter, because that will impact, you know, what we see downtown. So I'm thinking if we could more or less get numbers as to what we're doing, and we can give this information to the community saying we were able to take X, Y, Z from here, so people can see the impact, because all we're talking about is general. We're doing this, we're doing that, but we don't have numbers to show them how numbers are going down in certain areas and how it's impacting the community. So is it any way we can get that kind of data?
We'll check on it.
All right, so since we have a little bit of time here today, I know that I've already sent an email request for Maggie for the Environment and Safety Chair to consider for the agenda. There are a lot of questions about surveillance technology, about the Fuchsia's cameras, about technology, about how things are going with the cameras in the Housing Authority neighborhood. And we haven't been having a conversation about who has access, when they have access, when these tools are being used. But we are getting questions from the community, especially from business owners who are concerned about why the technology would be used for their businesses during events. So I would hope that while we're having conversations about public safety, making sure we're having public conversations for everyone's safety and well-being in our community, what tools are available and how they're used. So if we're going to be looking at planning for something, I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well.
And one thing else I'd like to say, I know you were saying that the Salvation Army will provide the shelters that will be sort of not just for Code Purple. I think that starts in October. So hopefully by doing that, we're able to maybe some of the people that are downtown, whatever, be able to, you know, maybe move into these shelters overnight, which actually get them acclimated to certain, you know, conditions where that can actually improve the overall downtown impact.
Sandra, I hear what you're requesting, and I think we've chatted about this. I too think, and this is on that list, just ongoing data would help. Like we did such great data analysis with that 60-day window, and it taught us a lot about what had been happening, you know, in the last couple of years. And with the unhoused and stuff and all of these programs, you know, I think we always have to talk about capacity. Like we did a study and it said we need 200 PSH beds. Well, 6 months from now, we'll have them, right? And we need a rapid rehousing and a 10 to 20 unit kind of thing. And if we're going to program all these and do all these, this is wonderful. That's kind of what I was talking about, the long-term plans that we're doing really well. But then I'm also concerned about capacity. Like, are we then going to have a study that says we need 200 more PSH beds? And can we continue to move in that direction? And what, where is our capacity around handling this? And do we have partner capacity and stuff? And just a broader picture, because I feel like out of need and necessity and dire safety, we have been tackling as it comes at us, right? Like when we hit COVID and we had to do the Civic Center and Harrah's and we did the immediate sheltering, we did the remote, we've been reacting as fast as possible to something that's never been in our purview. So I'm kind of grappling with what's the bigger long-term vision here. And I think that's what you're getting at too. Like, if we do everything and it doesn't work, then what? Yeah.
I would just like to sort of give the community, more information on what we are doing and actually showing them data.
Well, and on that note, we do have scheduled a joint city council meeting in November, which is a follow-up to our meeting last January where we heard the recommendations from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So exactly that, Sandra, to report back to the community about what have we been doing, what are our efforts, really going through that. And, we could probably do more than one meeting. We'd probably do a couple of days on this topic. I'd also like to hear, the state is now funded $1 billion towards mental health efforts, and the governor made an announcement about that in March, and I'm eager to hear from the state about what they're going to be doing with those funds and how that's going to play into cities and counties' work. So, there's a lot. It's a big topic, but that meeting will help bring us back and kind of do a check-in and see what else we're needing to work on the list from the National Alliance on Homelessness. What is not working? What is working? And data collection was one of their top recommendations so that we can make informed decisions. Folks, I gotta run. I have to go to another meeting, but I think, are we at the end?
I'm good. Thank you. I appreciate the extra time on that though.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. All right, folks, have a good day. Talk with you later. Bye.